So we've seen how that Joseph was able to enter into his destiny, which was life for multitudes of people, by choosing to walk in forgiveness and not retaining a legitimate debt that he had against many people. He had 11 brothers who failed. Not a one of them really stepped up and saved him from being sold into slavery. He was falsely accused, and his master, who had really a great deal of respect and trust in him, chose not to believe him. He was left in prison, and someone who promised to help him immediately forgot and didn't. You know, we don't know what all else happened, but there wasn't really a lot of good going on. He had a lot of reason to legitimately be bitter and angry, but he chose to leave it in the Lord's hand, to forgive, and he was able to bring life to multitudes. I know I keep saying that, but I really want to drive the point home that unforgiveness and bitterness, they go hand in hand, guys. They're a death warrant. They're a death warrant to your own prosperity, whether it be mental prosperity, emotional prosperity, financial, physical. I have seen unforgiveness render people with debilitating pain in their bodies. It is something that suffocates and destroys life. But see, it doesn't only destroy your life, it actually it affects the lives of those around you. You become a cancer. And you can release this into the lives of your descendants. So where do all these wounds come from? They come from day-to-day life. People, we're all frail. We're all human, and we're going to let each other down. Oftentimes, some of our big hurts that we kind of carry on into adulthood come from our parents in childhood. We have imperfect parents, and wounds are formed. And when we take those wounds and we allow it to cut ourselves off from our parents, now it doesn't mean that you stopped being in relationship, because you can cut yourself off in your heart from somebody and still be in physical proximity. You can still talk to them even every day, but your heart is removed and you're like, I'm not letting you in. You are not safe. I don't like you. I don't trust you. Now, not all forgiveness is reconciliation. We learned that already. But when there is that judgment and you're blocking yourself from your parents, and this is specific to parents, because your parent, it says, honor your father and mother that all may go well with you. Now, if you have abusive parents, it doesn't mean that you have to be in contact with them to honor them. But what happens is the word says that we are that we get blessings from our ancestors, and ancestral blessings, generational blessings, are visited up to the 10th generation. So in our families, even though that we may have horrifically imperfect parents, no matter how bad they are, you're still entitled to the inheritance of blessings that are coming down from the family line. But when you close your heart off and you refuse to forgive, you're blocking yourself from that generational blessing and aligning yourself with the generational cursing. And this can apply to our spiritual leaders as well. So, be sure to walk into in humility and forgiveness towards them as you would your parents. The only commandment that we have that came with a promise was honor your father and mother that all may go well with you. In the areas where you don't honor your father and mother, those are the areas where it's It's not going to go well for you in life. For instance, let's just say that you were always hungry because your parents were just terrible with money. Maybe they were just terrible with money because your father gambled or drank away the money, or your mom, had a spending problem, and she was just constantly, buying up everything, and there was no food in the house. And so as you forgive your parents for this and ask the Lord, I do not come into agreement with the way that my parents handled finances, but I do forgive and release them and ask that you bless them. Then you're opening up God's blessing, a financial provision to come into your own life, because you're no longer tied through bitterness and unforgiveness for the bad financial decisions that your parents made. So that's just an example of how that can work. Refusing to forgive, it truly does. Y'all, it just builds up that stronghold of forgiveness. It's just of bitterness. I'm sorry, bitterness. It's tough. It's a harsh thing. When we don't immediately forgive offenses towards us, we're opening up the gate for the enemy to come in and have a foothold upon which to build a stronghold of bitterness in our lives. We need to watch over each other, to make sure, this has come from Hebrews 12, that no one misses the revelation of God's grace. And make sure no one lives with a root of bitterness sprouting within them, which will only cause trouble and poison the hearts of many. Now, remember, we've talked about that it's very, very important to be in correct spiritual order. We want our spirit man, which is 100% reconciled to God. No work needs to be done. It's a done deal. When you receive Jesus, your spirit is alive and well and 100% reconciled with God. That's who we want to be in charge. Our mind, our will, and our emotions, which is our soul, that needs some sanctification process, because it hasn't caught up to yet what our spirit automatically learned in an instant. Our bodies have to become submitted to our soul, because our body wants what it wants when it wants it. I mean, when you're hungry, when I'm hungry, get out of my way. I'm hungry, I'm mad, feed me now. But I have to get my body needs to submit to my soul, who is submitted to my spirit, because my spirit's got direct revelation from God. The rest of me is trying to catch up with it. I want the head honcho leading this boat here. And so when we take a look at Ephesians 4:26 through 32 from the Passion Translation, this really brings this home about how important it is that we do not fight our battles as Christians the way that world fights. It's like Christianity is a bizarro world. To be a leader, you must become a servant. The least of these shall be the greatest. He uses the simple things to confound the wise. It's like upside down world. We remember, we fight a battle. We are born into a battleground. This is war. What are our weapons? Let's take a look. But don't let the passions of your emotions lead you to sin. Don't let anger control you or fuel you for revenge, not even for a day. In your anger, do not sin. Don't give the slanderous accuser, the devil, an opportunity to manipulate you. That's unforgiveness, guys. If any one of you has stolen from someone else, never do it again. Instead, be industrious, earn an honest living, and then you'll have enough to bless those in need. And never let ugly or hateful words come from your mouth, but instead let your words become beautiful gifts that encourage others. Do this by speaking words of grace to help them. The Holy Spirit of God has sealed you in Jesus Christ until you experience your full salvation. So never grieve the Spirit of God or take for granted His holy influence in your life. Lay aside bitter words, temper tantrums, revenge, profanity, and insults, but instead be kind, be affectionate towards one another. Has God graciously forgiven you? Then graciously forgive one another in the depths of Christ's love. One last thing before we close. Jesus tells a parable about a young man who owed the king an enormous amount of money. This amount of money was so great that it was impossible for him to pay it back in his lifetime. It would kind of like being, unless you're Bill Gates, Donald Trump, one of these guys, it would be impossible for you to pay back. It would be like one of us having a debt of several millions of dollars. And so the king calls him and was like, hey, you owe me this money, time to pay up. And he falls at the king's feet and he says, please have mercy on me. Give me more time and I can pay this back. No, he really couldn't. And the king realized this. The king realized there's no way I know what this guy makes. He's never going to have the resources to pay this back. And the king says, you know what? I forgive you. You are free. You are released from this debt. That's what the Father has done for us. But look what he does. He leaves the king's presence. He's going back to his own little space, and he runs into a guy who owes him a small amount of money. And he says, hey, you owe me some money. Pay up right now. And the guy says, no, I can't right now. I don't have it. Give me a little bit more time and I will get this money to you. He goes, no. He has him thrown into debtor's prison. So there's people around that they knew that the king had forgiven him a crazy big debt. And they're like, wow, we cannot believe you did this. So they go and they tell the king, like, hey, you know that guy that you just released from that enormous debt? Guess what he just did? He just had his friend thrown into debtor's prison for this teeny tiny sum of money he would not. The king was furious. The king was, that's it. He calls the guy in front of him and he goes, seriously, after I just released you of this incredible, amazing debt, you can't show mercy to your friend? He turned him, and the scripture says, and he threw him in prison and turned him over to the tormentors. That's the key. You are not tormenting anyone by holding unforgiveness towards them. You are allowing yourself to be bound in prison, to be tormented by an offense that Jesus Christ can heal you from. Now, truthfully, I was not born with a forgiving nature, but I did understand, slowly but surely, the power of forgiveness and overcoming this battle to be free. And then I understood that in my own power, I was incapable of forgiving another person, especially those who had really, really deeply wounded me. Okay, sometimes even those that just kind of tick me off a little bit. I told you, I'm not forgiving by nature. But I can go to my Father in heaven and I can say, Lord, this person hurt me. And it stings. And I can't seem to let it go. But I want to. I want to surrender this to you. I choose by faith to forgive. Daddy, will you work this out in my heart? And he does it for me every single time. And he will do it for you. I'll see you next week. I hope you had a great day.